NBC and a bunch of other outlets said approximately an hour ago in Paris, France. Ethan, I just want to start with you. Come on. All of Europe, but first of all, this is not the first time he's been saying it. We've heard this from Le Maire also around the G7 summit. That said, this is very clear cut. How much of a problem is this for Libra?
Well, the thing that's really interesting again is whether or not it's Libra that's going to create this scalable global currency that is non-sovereign, or whether it's somebody else, whether it's lots of somebody else's. I think Libra's really opened the door for that. Again, as we saw yesterday when we talked about Japan and with Line coming up with their own digital currency, and I think a lot of these, if they're not crossing country borders, then they're running into less regulatory issues. But the clear issue is when something like this is going to go global and they want to hit everybody at the same time, then they're going to run into all kinds of problems. That's very obvious with this. For me, the thing is it's whether or not it's Libra, it will be something, I think, and the fear here is what's obvious. Sovereign states realize what will happen to their power if we take away the economic power that's linked to how they can control the monetary supply and the way that it affects the economy. And so if we can't track every single payment, if we don't know where all the money is going, if we can't influence what money is technically worth, then all of a sudden we lose an awful lot of that power. And so the fear here is real, whether or not they can actually impose this, because as we've seen with crypto in other ways, if Libra decides to skip out of certain, not necessarily Libra, any crypto decides to avoid certain zones because they came with legal compliance, then what we're going to outside of that scales for most of the world will have so much power.
And this is, and I'm going to, entirely so. And I'm wondering,
even if the U.S. with the SEC,
I'm wondering with you though, you know, when somebody like France, and actually for the entire panel right now, when Le Maire states this so clearly, and France is quite a big country in the whole of Europe, but he's referring to the entire continent. Facebook, ever since introducing Libra, not just the hearings in the Senate and Congress, has been hit with a bunch of regulators saying we are not going to let this happen. Something like this. Where does this put Libra?
I hope
France was not the first. Sorry.
Start further.
I hope that they will continue speaking truth to power, because again, in today's world, Facebook has a lot of money, a lot of data on every single human on this planet almost, and so they have immense power. However, I don't think Facebook is the right vehicle to deliver the most scalable currency in the world. It's going to be a spying tool for them to gather even more data on our daily activities.
I know, but they might. This might happen, and it's not just them.
Well, people will be able to choose to buy into Libra or not, and I hope that governments will do their job and, sabotage their efforts as much as possible so that we don't see a Libra coin coming to fruition.
That's what Libra announced at Swiss stocks just yesterday.
I respectfully and lovingly beg to differ. And I think that if it's not going to happen by Facebook, it's going to happen by WeChat, or it's going to happen by whoever else. And France was not the first to say that it actually, well, surprisingly so, hurts our sovereignty. And Trump was against this before, and the whole Senate actually were against this before in David Marcus's questioning, I would say. And it wasn't just a hearing, it was a very thorough interrogation.
Which he didn't answer much, I have to tell you.
As he was prepared to
not answer.
The most that I can, as much as I can say. But, it's not the first country that's going to say that, it hurts their sovereignty. I mean, that's what it is. It gives a control of a coin to an organization or enterprise or a group of enterprises which are not the governments, and therefore the governments should be against it.
But can they operate without the government?
And this is also such an interesting point, and I'm afraid I don't want to pile in on, but I'm going to disagree with Rena as well on this, because I think
that's why we have you here, Rena.
No, I think there's an inevitability argument to it here, which Jaguar put out importantly as well, that Libra it may be the first ones to be pushing it on this scale, but if it's not them, then who? And if it's not now, then when? But it is a matter of some pretty sacrosanct policy for a lot of these governments. I mean, the US dollar is something that you have not been able to touch. It doesn't matter. You look at the post-war sort of global establishment. The one thing that the US keeps as absolutely sacrosanct is the dollar. And Europe, on its own level, I mean, it's been through a euro crisis. It knows what it means to lose control of the reins of its own sovereign currency, and it's not going to be willing to hand over the keys to the kingdom to anyone else in the near future either. Even though the euro might not be the world's strongest currency out there. That being said, that as much as governments might fight this, whether this comes from Europe, whether this comes from Asia, whether this comes from jurisdictions where there is a developed financial ecosystem, or it comes from nations where there isn't such a developed and financial and regulatory ecosystem, this is going to happen in some way or another, and I think governments need to start being proactive rather than just reactive.
And that leads us to the Libra announcing Swiss talks yesterday, which after going silent for several months, I'm wondering actually maybe Le Maire came out today at that conference, at the OECD conference, responding just because the news came out yesterday that Libra released a statement saying it had applied for a payment system license in Switzerland as part of its goal of rolling out the global fiat basket pegged digital asset. Now the Swiss regulators, which seems to be the case with them in Libra, wasted no time in responding and saying FINMA, the regulator FINMA, said that in addition to a payment system license, the project would be subject to additional rules to take bank-like risks into account.
Naturally, and it's good that it's that way.
Then
finally, there's a regulator that accepts them and regulates them, and maybe will monitor or at least have some kind of a.
They didn't say will accept. They said
might.
They agreed that they submitted the request to do so. It's not that they are willing to regulate them.
Exactly.
And I personally, again, it's a matter of time before a big digital currency takes over the payments system around the world, but I hope it's not Facebook. Again, they have failed us even before the crypto bubble. They failed us as users. They failed us with immense data breaches, with polarizing communities all over the world. I don't think they are the best ambassadors to bring forth a digital currency. You could tell me it's inevitable, fine, but I am not going to say it's a great thing that Facebook will take over the crypto world.
But is it better that the People's Bank of China does it?
Oh yeah, WeChat is better.
Yeah.
No, Ethan. Yeah. He doesn't want to ask you.
Two things to throw in there. First, just to go back one quick second, it's also important to realize that France is not the EU. So just because one of the governments says that this isn't going to work or that they won't accept it, doesn't mean that a lot of the other smaller governments that are extremely interested in seeing cryptoeconomics come into play won't resist that. So I think
there's a phrase, there's a
lot of grandstanding, I think, as well. So I think it's we'll see exactly how that goes. It is a big statement, but I'm not sure we can take it at face value in the sense of where it's going. The second thing I would say, though, is I think it's also important to continue to talk about Libra and not Facebook Libra. Facebook and Calibra have together 2% control of the Libra Association. And while it's at their initiative to create this, while they will continue to have tons of influence over it, the entire point is to make it a group effort. Now, it's a corporate group effort, so that has its own issues. But I completely don't.
I know, but I'm going to. I will.
It's Facebook.
But I will say that to me, at the end of the day, and I think that's one thing that came out of the Senate and Congress hearings. Of course, they say clearly they have only 2%, but it is Facebook.
It is Facebook.
It's Facebook, guys. I mean, that's the initiative. That's the facade. I mean, we all know what it means. I'm wondering, though, is it because Asher raised a very interesting thing, and it always brings me back to in this race, because it is obvious that regulators all around the world are piling, I love your bottle, are piling, difficulty after difficulty on this to be launched. And Libra ain't going to make it, or I would bet and say, I'll put that bet out there, Libra ain't making it in the first quarter of 2020. It doesn't look like it.
It doesn't look like it.
It really doesn't look like it. The gram is.
Q3, though.
Q3, you think?
No, I think it will take
Q1
several
Q3.
years.
It will happen. And it's
that fact that it'll happen, but I think many will happen before that.
Exactly.
Yes.
It's going to be really bad if it doesn't happen, because otherwise, if that doesn't happen, then WeChat will happen first, or some other even less responsible enterprise, Telegram, or less responsible great enterprise will be the first. It doesn't mean that if the first it's going to control.
No.
But still,
I don't
really,
think Telegram is such a bad ambassador or a bad vehicle to bring forth the most scalable digital currency. I would argue that it's even better than Facebook because they protect their users a lot better than Facebook does and Facebook did. Again, I think because Facebook is such a conglomerate, it has to obey by international rules and regulation. And so by default, it's going to take them a lot longer to onboard onto an international digital payments platform that will transcend borders.
I know, but the second they do, they have 2.3 billion users.
Exactly.
Again,
and I'm not surprised they went to
still
Switzerland.
have to obey by international rules and regulations that vary from country to country. And I find it hard to believe that they're going to be able to overcome all these obstacles within the next few months.
And also, let's point out as well, I mean, just because they have the users doesn't mean that they'll flock
they'll
to it.
vote,
yeah.
I mean, we saw, for example, Google's social media service, Google+.
Yes.
Who ever used that? No one I know ever functionally used it. These big companies are not infallible. All right, yeah, maybe you used it.
Maybe you're the only one who uses it.
But these companies are not infallible.
Unless
They
you
can
get a
launch things and
discount,
fail.
Unless you get a discount on your Facebook ads, but if you use Libra, you get whatever, 20 or whatever,
Oh, then
10%
everybody will
discount.
follow.
They
and
build
then
it into their
everybody votes.
economy, but that doesn't mean it's going to get the wide-scale mass adoption. I'm not sure that. I'm sure they will find a way to work it into their own sort of
You need to
internal
count the paying
ecosystem.
users, though.
But
Yeah.
But guys, I want to move us along because Facebook, speaking of Facebook, and the next issue actually deals with that, because when we think Facebook, we think elections.
That's for you, my dear.
But we're sitting here in Tel Aviv, Israel, except for the lucky man, Ethan, who's sitting in Paris. But the second round of Israeli elections is upon us this coming week. It's the second round within 6 months. And like many taking place around the world, elections and this whole process called democracy is having a really hard time in the course, over the course of the last several years. One possible solution to ease such concerns could be blockchain. And it makes one wonder why it hasn't been used that way. This week specifically, because we're in Tel Aviv, Blockchain Week, there was a gathering of people at the Tel Aviv University, a group of experts asking the same questions. Here's Ron Spitzer's report from there.
For the first time in history, Israel is having a second round of voting just 2 months after the country initially voted, as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu wasn't able to establish a government. With this, political players are already warning about fake results and polling booth manipulation. One wonders why blockchain is yet to be considered in the ever-controversial topic of democratic elections.
Getting into blockchain, it seems to be something that can solve all our problems. First of all, security, integrity, transparency, decentralization, no single hackable database will be relied upon to provide an accurate vote count. Blockchain will be publicly auditable. Blockchain will ensure both transparency for the purposes of election auditing and anonymity of the individual voters. Anyway, it sounds almost as perfect as my husband.
This was the topic of discussion in the recent event hosted by the University of Tel Aviv's School of Management. The question posed, should Israel vote for blockchain elections? Election manipulation has been in the mainstream media for the last few years, so why isn't a blockchain or even a digital voting system being considered?
If you ask any computer security expert about elections, electronic elections, you will get a very surprised face, or at worst, somebody who is a bit terrified. We had, just before the last elections, a conference at the Technion with people coming from Brazil, where they have electronic voting machines, and people coming from Estonia, where people vote from home, not on the blockchain. And I think the consensus among security researchers is that voting online and voting electronically is a bad idea.
Well, to understand a blockchain voting system's potential as a solution, we first have to know what the problems are with current systems. One example is the United States.
Welcome back to Block TV. This is Blockheads. We round up all the latest headlines from around the cryptosphere. CoinDesk reports that Binance US plans to begin onboarding customers next week. Trustnode reports 100,000 transactions stuck as Tether clogs Ethereum. CCN reports how Coinbase quietly settles $1.1 million Bitcoin theft case. The Block Crypto reports how MasterCard and R3 to build new blockchain-based solution for overseas payments. BTC Manager reports how Nova Scotia Supreme Court approves the relocation of Quadriga CX bankruptcy case to Toronto. Now, CoinDesk reports that Binance, the world's largest exchange, will begin onboarding customers in the US on September 18th. Customers will be able to register and deposit 6 cryptocurrencies, including Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin, and Tether. Now, the date for when customers can actually start trading on the platform has not been announced. Important to note that as of now, Binance will not be available to customers in New York due to the BitLicense regulatory requirement. TrustNodes reports that Tether is clogging up the Ethereum network. Ethereum users are complaining that some of the transactions are taking hours and for some even days. The culprit, Tether. Tether has performed 100,000 on-chain transactions just in the past 7 hours, about 50% of the entire Ethereum network capacity. While I'm happy a coin has found a major use case, scalability once again has reared its ugly head. Tether and Ethereum need to find a solution to this network congestion problem if either wants to succeed going forward. CCN reports that Coinbase, the US's biggest exchange, has reached a settlement with a digital asset fund manager whose stolen Bitcoin was transferred to the Coinbase exchange. Earlier this year, hackers managed to steal over 100 Bitcoin from Liam Robertson, CEO of Alphabet, and send $1.1 million of those Bitcoins to Coinbase. Now, Robertson then got a UK court to prevent Coinbase from moving the stolen Bitcoins and even forced Coinbase to disclose the identity of who controlled the criminal wallet. Now, Robertson and Coinbase have settled the case for $1.1 million. While this case might be over for them, it sets a powerful precedent in the UK for how Bitcoin is viewed legally, which can assist crypto fraud victims going forward. The Block Crypto reports that MasterCard has partnered with enterprise blockchain firm R3 to develop and pilot a new blockchain-based solution for cross-border payments. The project will aim to connect global payments infrastructure and banks supported by MasterCard's vast settlement network. This represents a potential massive use case for blockchain. BTC Manager reports that a judge of the Nova Scotia Supreme Court has agreed to a request to move the ongoing Quadriga CS case from Halifax to Toronto, Ontario. The reason for this move is that most of the victims are situated in Toronto and it would make it cheaper and more convenient for them. This is just the latest in a long, winding, and weird tale of a CEO who took everyone's crypto to the grave. Honestly, the victims deserve every break they can get in this case. Besides losing all their crypto to the CEO, EY, or Ernst & Young, the company charged in getting the crypto back for the victims, accidentally lost another $1.3 million of the victims' crypto by sending it to the locked wallets they were charged with opening. That was Blockheads. Stay current, stay informed, and stay tuned at blocktv.com.
For more news and updates, follow us on Twitter.
Block TV, live at Ethereal Summit, Tel Aviv Blockchain Week, September 15th, 2019.
Manny, thanks so much for joining us on Block TV. I want to start by asking, here we are at an event at Tel Aviv Blockchain Week. Pretty amazing to have this sort of event occurring here in Israel. What do you think the impact can be for the blockchain community in Israel and internationally of having this sort of conferences?
Yes, I think it's very good to have this kind of conferences that bring together people from all over the world and from Israel, right? So, you know, I go around here, I see a lot of people that I know and a lot of people that I don't know. And, you know, people who are occasionally in or sometimes don't meet, this is an opportunity for them to come together and meet and do things together. And, of course, we have the international guests who come from all over the world, and that's the way to establish new connections. I think it can really bring the whole area forward.
You know, many would say, you know, why Israel? Why is Israel such a hub, and why, in terms of blockchain and crypto development, what's relevant to here? How would you answer that?
So in general, Israel is known as the startup nation. So we have a lot of entrepreneurship here. We have a lot of technology people. So people, you know, always like to innovate here. They like to challenge the existing. So Israelis don't like to feel like they are full, so whenever they see something which is not right, they try to fix it. So I think that's part of the thing that drives Israelis to innovation and startups and so on. And this, of course, reflects also in a new technology like Bitcoin and blockchain, cryptocurrencies. So we like all kinds of innovation, and this is at the forefront of innovation. So of course, we would see that here.
And Manny, as well, I want to talk about the market for a moment, because first half of 2019, super exciting time. We broke through crypto winter, had a parabolic upswing in Bitcoin particularly. And now we've entered this strange phase where the market seems relatively flat. We're sort of holding in this zone, and yet Bitcoin is continuing to grow its market cap dominance. How do you play into this narrative? What do you think of what's happening in the markets at the moment?
Yeah, so I think stability is good. So specifically with the Bitcoin price, the fact that it is so stable is very good for its usage, and it's very good for getting the thoughts of Bitcoin into their awareness. So, and I think that you know, with a lot of the alts and so on, it's all kinds of experiments where people try and sometimes it doesn't work. But with Bitcoin, it's a bit more of a, you know, a stable thing which people, most of them understand already. So the longer Bitcoin exists and doesn't fail catastrophically or something like that, I think the confidence in it increases. And this reflects both on the dominance of Bitcoin with respect to alts and also in the market in general. But I think we are still not completely out of the crypto winter. So there was, of course, an uptick from 2018, but still there's some time until the market really recovers and the companies have more revenue and can promote new activity.
But you think ultimately it's a matter of time?
I think, yeah, definitely. I think that over time, whatever should happen will happen, and we've seen it happen several times. We had a bubble and then a winter and again and again. So now I think we're at the stage where we're starting to break out of the winter. And yeah, and if things continue as they have in the past, then we will see another bubble, which is good and bad, because we don't, you know, the volatility and the craziness, they're not good, but it does provoke new interest, new blood coming in and doing new projects. So, yeah.
And Manny as well, speaking of like sort of the macro picture, things happening outside the crypto sphere that could impact on it. You know, we've got all this sort of talk at the moment internationally. People have concerns of recessions in equity markets and in the US and around the world, and that could be a potential boost to Bitcoin. And then even just today, last night, there were comments. Jay Clayton, the chairman of the SEC, went on CNBC and said that they're positive that there are developments in getting an ETF passed in Bitcoin. Do you think these bigger macro economic elements can impact the market, or do you think the crypto markets are separate from the other equity markets?
Yeah, so I think for the large part, the two things are mostly not very connected because Bitcoin and the blockchain are still rather small, which means they have their own things. So the things that affect its growth are more internal to the Bitcoin and the blockchain, so whether people believe in it, how well it works, and so on. I think the global things don't have that much of an effect, but in the context of, for example, an ETF for Bitcoin, I think that could be good because this does allow, you know, established bodies to go into this market, and this could help bring in new funds and new growth.
And so you said before you don't think we're necessarily entirely out of the crypto winter. If you were to project ahead till, say, the end of 2019, where do you see the Bitcoin price around that time?
Yeah, so I try to avoid making short-term predictions. I mean, I feel more comfortable looking at the really long term and try to interpolate over time, but that's not something that works over shorter time scales. So I will,
What do you say in the longer term?
Okay, so I mean, I think one of the things we can look at is that in this time, 30 years from now, where hopefully you can go to any store in Israel and you're not sure that it still accepts shekels, then I think at that time, one Bitcoin could be easily $1 million. So we can interpolate based on that. So if things go well, and of course it could be that I'm completely wrong and everything will fail, but if things go according to plan, then I guess in 10 years, $100,000 per Bitcoin is very reasonable. So that's where we want to shoot for.
Okay. Manny, I want to thank you so much for speaking with us at Block TV.
For more news and updates, follow us on Twitter.
And welcome back to Block TV, where it is time for Links in the Chain. And of course, speaking of links in the chain, media is one of the key drivers or links of the crypto industry. Word of the sphere will only get out if someone writes it and reports it. And I'm so happy to be joined today by a man who is doing more than his fair share to get the word out and provide the world with better understanding of the landscape and potential. Talking about none other, my favorite person in the world, host of CNBC's crypto trader Ron Nooner, visiting us here today from New York in honor of Tel Aviv Blockchain Week. So great to have you here.
It's so good to be here, finally. I've been on Skype interviews and Zoom interviews so many times. It's so good to be with you in the studio.
Finally, physically in flesh.
Yes.
And it's a perfect time because approximately an hour ago, we obviously just this week have been discussing Libra when it comes to the Switzerland connection. But CNBC reporting an hour ago, speaking at an OECD conference in Paris, I'm reading the report, French finance minister Bruno Le Maire said Libra would put the sovereignty of governments at risk. All these concerns around Libra are serious, I'm quoting the man. So I want to say this with a lot of clarity, says the French finance minister. In these conditions, we cannot authorize the development of Libra on European soil. From the moment it was announced, Libra is just hitting regulators. This is very, not that I think that the French finance minister can on his own condone the entire EU, but what does this spell for the first quarter of 2020? What does this spell for this whole Facebook attempt?
So let's ask a question. Are we surprised by what's going on here? There's no surprises about what's going on here. I don't know if you remember, but we spoke about Libra a while back, and I said that it was quite a risky and probably very well calculated move on Facebook's part. Because Libra is not actually about crypto.
Right, entirely.
It shouldn't be on a show in a crypto studio. This is about corporates taking on governments. And I think that the calculation that went on at Facebook said, look, we've got right now more inhabitants than any country in the world. Our inhabitants actually like us because they use us every day, and they actually do like us. And now we don't have a currency. And the only thing that stops us from having a presidency or power is having our own currency. And I think that when Libra announced it, nobody paid very much attention.
Right.
But after careful thought, the governments are now starting to realize that, hold on, Facebook is about to launch its own currency. And I think that the US pushback, the French pushback, and there's going to be much more pushback. I mean,
no, look, the Swiss even just yesterday, after Facebook said that Libra released the statement that they're in talks with the Swiss regulators, and the Swiss regulators immediately shot back and saying, well, but we need you to still do this and this and this.
So the question is, did Facebook know this when they planned
That's what I want to ask you, because you said something very interesting. This was a calculated risk, and I am, maybe I'm so jaded that I think they wouldn't have gone on this road unless they mapped it out beforehand.
Yeah, they're a very smart institution. Yeah. The smartest minds in the world live in Facebook. Also, they know they're under scrutiny by all the governments, specifically the US government being their worst enemy.
Right.
So they anticipated all of this, and I think that they planned how it would play out. And I think now we're watching it play out. In terms of a 2020 Q1 launch, absolutely no way.
No way, right?
No way.
No way.
No way. Forget about it. And again, I say, we shouldn't refer to we shouldn't even be discussing Libra on crypto shows. It's not a matter to do with crypto. It's not decentralized. It's just a digital currency backed by other currencies, which one day may replace the US dollar as a centralized currency by an institution. That's all it is.
Entirely, and it's being marketed as one. Does it really matter that it's not cryptocurrency? Because there are many people in the sphere who will say, who cares, it's doing wonders for us.
It's amazing if you want a centralized currency, if you want something that's auditable and et cetera,
right.
It's not a competitor to Bitcoin, and it's right now, as it stands, not a competitor to Ethereum or EOS or Tron, though one day it may be. They said it would have smart contract capabilities. We have yet to be seen how that happens. When Facebook announced this, it was a foregone conclusion that it would launch.
Right.
today people are asking questions and they're saying, you know, is this really a foregone conclusion, or will Facebook fail again at digital payments? Personally, I think it's going to happen.
I think so too. I think they're too far gone. I think that would be a massive, I think it's going to happen. But as you said, not that close by.
Not that close, and let's keep watching it. I think it is a very exciting development, but there are a lot of hurdles.
Before we move on to the mass success, that is Binance, I just want to ask you, because you are based in the States, but just to take you to another part of the world that may be launching before Libra. Looks like it's going to be launching before Libra, and that's the Gram. And needless to say, Pavel Durov, we know nothing from, that point of view. We have no information. They don't give a damn about the press. They don't give a damn about, we just know that it's probably launching October 31st.
Well, they have to launch October 31st.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right? Remind us why.
Yes. So, full disclosure, I am an investor in Telegram. Part of the contract, they have to launch before the 31st. Otherwise, theoretically, they can return 90% of the capital to investors. I'm hearing that there's a main net and that it is a test net and that it is running and that people are developing it. But my other hat is that I run accelerator programs for blockchain startups. Right. And I've yet to see one blockchain startup tell me that they're developing on Telegram. So I haven't seen an ecosystem. Yeah. I've heard a lot of talk about wallets and infrastructure, but I haven't seen anything tangible yet. And like you say, Pavel Durov and the team don't care about investors, don't care about
regulators,
the press. They just move
They're going to go ahead. And to me, in many ways, I love the Gram, by the way. I'm not invested in anything, sadly. But that said, there was one thing about the Gram. Clearly, it's approximately 250 million users on Telegram. It's not as much as 2.3 billion, which is Facebook. What do you think, though, from the moment of that launch? And I hear you, if there's no infrastructure nothing developed on that infrastructure, that's sad to hear. But when they launch, what do you think that'll do to the notion of other coins that are, because they're decentralized, one can argue.
Well, are they decentralized? They're on the Telegram network. I think that, we've got the Kik coin, which is the messenger coin. So I think that already exists. I think that's not the exciting part. The exciting part is when you start applying smart contract and logic. And Telegram said from the beginning that their token was not only a payment token, it's actually it's a smart contract token which is going to work across a messenger of 250 people. We must also think about one other thing. A WhatsApp user is really anyone. It's the generic messenger user. But when you talk about Telegram, it's users that are slightly more technologically savvy.
Savvy and within the sphere, one can even argue.
Correct. Yeah. So I think that it's going to be a very good closed ecosystem. I think one of the big disservices is that they're not publicizing it more. They're not encouraging developers to build in it. But you know what? They've been very smart up until now, and we should only trust.
I know, maybe they know what they're doing, and we don't. Just because they're not talking to us doesn't mean anything. Speaking of developers, we had a chance yesterday to sit with Tech Chia. He's head of Binance X, which is the division that really is doing just that, looking for developers to enter the ecosystem, because as you said, that's what it's going to rise and fall on. But they're also launching, apropos Binance, launching its US exchange with enhanced KYC requirements next week at the second half of September. And the move has long been anticipated, especially by the US residents who were removed from Binance Core Exchange. One point to note, the exchange will be offering 6 trading pairs, but not the company's own BNB token. What do you make of all of that?
So first of all, you've got to take your hat off to Binance as an organization.
It's a success story
It's a success story that keeps on bewildering me. Every time I think that they really can't do anything else, they do something else. They came out a few weeks ago and said they're now in the lending game.
And they're in the lending game.
And then they were in the futures game, and then they were in the leverage game. So take your hat off to Binance for being able to adapt. Take your hat off to Binance for being able to now adapt to regulation as well. Because remember, Binance started as this unregulated, we break all the rules, while Coinbase was the
secure, supposedly,
Exactly. And now Binance is saying, okay, now we've got the user base and we've got the reputation and we've got this huge business. And now we're actually going to start complying with regulation. That's the good Binance side of it. Let's talk about the sad side of it. And that is that the USA is, in true USA style, over-regulating every single industry and over-policing it, and therefore forcing companies to take these kind of measures and falling behind. Now, As you know, I recently moved to the USA. I'm living in New York. And one of the hardest things that I've had to get used to is how over-regulated that country
Everything
is.
is.
And it's very sad. It's very sad.
As a New Yorker, I'm saying this.
Yeah.
To be fair.
It's very
look, if you look at the SEC, it's very true. Historically, they still comply with laws from 1933, 1942. It doesn't make sense. But Binance made a very conscious choice now, and I'm wondering with you, do they understand that they have to operate in this over-regulated market or not maintain their position?
So there's two sides to the coin here, because I think they still have a lot of US users on their traditional platform. I think users of a VPN in crypto are many, and I think that a lot of users are still using their traditional platform and not admitting that they are US residents and et cetera, et cetera. I think that they do understand that they're smart people. They have the best lawyers on their side. They're going to comply. Simple as that. Also, we've seen what's happening with Bitfinex. If you do box against the regulator in the US, you'll pay the price. So I think CZ is a smart man, and I think that they will navigate their way.
I was worried they were going to run out of money at a certain point. There were all these projects and launches. But CZ, that is, I think in many respects, that's the success story of the site.
Mark my words, Binance going into the US is the best thing to happen to US consumers. You know why? Because let's watch what Coinbase does next. Now, I don't know if you know, but Coinbase announced that they are now going into IEOs. Coinbase! Coinbase for years only had limited trading pairs. And now they're going into IEOs.
That's an immediate reaction to Binance, right?
Of course,
it's entirely that.
But it's panic. It's Binance is coming. What have they got that we haven't got? I wouldn't be surprised if next Coinbase goes into lending.
That's I'm sure that's going to be announced on Sunday. But fabulous point in that respect. Ron, also listen, it's so much fun sitting and speaking with you. I don't end this without discussing the amazing things you're doing in New York. One of them is going to be Banter, a 24/7. First of all, online radio channel. As a journalist, I want to tell you, you understand that radio is the ultimate form of journalism because it has the liberty of television. It has the immediacy of television and the liberty of print.
That's a very good description.
In that respect, tell me about Banter. What is it?
So I love crypto Twitter, but I wanted to bring it more to life.
Yeah.
And so created the concept of a 24/7, 365 crypto talk radio. And it's launching soon. I'm not going to give away the launch date yet. But what it is, it's an app which allows people to call in live from around the world and join in on debates and talk radio. It's going to be driven by listeners,
right.
Hosted by some of the biggest crypto names in the world. And that's Banter for you. And I'm super excited about it because imagine all this banter, which is happening on Twitter, now moving
into a 24/7 podcast.
Into a 24/7 podcast.
Oh, okay, genius. Ron Nooner, possibly the voice, to me at least, of the sphere. I want to thank you so much for being with us today on Block TV here in Tel Aviv for Blockchain Week, and a pleasure and a treat for us. We are Block TV. Block TV, we'll be right back.
For more news and updates, follow us on Twitter.
Welcome back to Block TV. It's time now for Suck My Blockchain, where every day our team members scour the World Wide Web for the best offerings on crypto and blockchain. And today we have with us a man who can cleanse a pipe, clear it right out. That's, of course, Zachy Hennessy, who to tell us everything that made it and didn't make it to your feeds.
Got my little pipe cleaner out, and I just slurped it all. Hey, crypto trading, it's a game of patience, virtue, and more patience, Asher. Crypto mining is a harder game of patience, virtue, more patience, and high electric bills. At Crypto Memes reposted this meme illustrating this point. How's crypto mining going? Dying inside. If you think about it though, really this meme would be most applicable to actual miners. I think that someone who inhales about 6 pounds of coal dust every month is probably dying inside a little more than a NEET with a mining machine in their mom's garage.
Yeah, true. That black lung, it does it for you.
Gets you every time.
Cleans you right out. They need you to come and clear out their pipes, you know what I'm saying? That's what you're good for. But in the meantime, what else you got for us?
Jameson Lopp tweeted out this handy little saying, Bitcoin isn't a get-rich-quick scheme, it's a don't-get-poor-slowly scheme. Now, the logic here is very sound, but this should definitely not be the initial pitch you give to a newcomer to the sphere. You know, it's just a little suspicious. These watches aren't cheap knockoffs, they're inexpensive replicas. This isn't a pyramid scheme, it's a tapered management organization. This isn't my other boyfriend, it's just a close friend who I only hang out with when you're out of town. You've got to make sure you keep your marketing away from those nasty buzzwords in the first place. You can trust me, I took a social psychology class in university, so I'm basically an expert.
Well, as someone who was best buds with Jameson Lopp as I interviewed him at DNDD the other day, I can tell you the man is a marketing whiz, so let's not fault his strategies there.
Fair enough.
All right? But what else you got?
Well, here's a wonderful little gem that shows the kind of great stuff that you get when you sort by new. J. Bumb Style says, that's a hard B, Bumb Style. Should I put my entire savings into BTC? With the talk of negative interest rates and the printing of more fiat and watching countries' currencies drop and a whole bunch of other stuff going on in the world, what do you guys think? First of all, I think you got to add some punctuation. But as you can imagine, there was a variety of discussion and many comments with differing views. The answer is no. Do not put your entire savings in any one place ever, unless your friend Davis says he'll protect your money. You can trust Davis. He's got a lizard.
Yeah, a rather plasticky looking lizard. If I'm to focus a little too deeply on Davis right now, I'll say the lizard looks a little plasticky.
Just look into his eyes,
like
man.
your dreams, Zachy. But in the meantime, I think it's an important point to make. Let's diversify our assets, people.
Yeah.
You know, love me some Bitcoin, but you got to make sure you're keeping it round.
Invest in lizards.
You never quite know. Do invest in lizards. But in the meantime, while you're putting your investments where you may, I want to thank our very own Zachy Hennessy for breaking down all the latest in news and information and sucking that blockchain dry. In the meantime, stay with us at blocktv.com for all the latest news and information. I'm Asher Westrop Evans. Thanks for watching.
For more news and updates, follow us on Twitter.
Tell us a little bit about what you're working on at the moment, some of the big projects, what your focus is, and what brings you to DNDD.
Bring me to DND. So I was one of the co-organizers, which is. Do you want me to hold your mic?
No.
So the program actually started. The idea came to build something that is for the community. When Tomer and I started talking with people regarding some international conferences that are coming to Tel Aviv, they were all telling us that they don't want to do something specific. They want to see the ecosystem. They want something that is providing each one of the different projects a decent stage and decent way to express him and what are the goals. And that's exactly what we created. We created a special conference for the community, by the community, for the community.
Fantastic initiative, and also not just locals, but also bringing internationals here, right?
Yeah, it's like to connect everybody to the Israeli ecosystem, and we just wanted to create a unique atmosphere that you're going to go to a conference and going to feel fun to speak with people. Same as we're doing in some of our smaller group meetups, things like that. You just like go meet nice people. You're not always listening to the topics or to the panels. But you mainly want to hang and talk with people that are interested in the same things that you are interested. And that's what we hope to create today.
All right, and speaking of things that you're interested in, tell us a little bit about your work and what you're doing outside of obviously organizing this great conference.
Thank you. So I'm kind of doing several things. I work in a VC that's mainly focusing on renewable energy, smart mobility, hardcore old industry, bringing new tech and new blood into that space. But beside that, I'm doing similar things that I'm doing to the VC. I'm doing as a consulting to blockchain VCs and hedge funds, tech research, mainly not for creating commercial products, but to create specific IP for the corporations so they can learn by doing more about blockchain space, about distributed technology, and things that they can learn by doing, create the data, to learn how to copy the data and how to and also to make it in a way that it could be very versatile and they could change it to different type of products, future products that inside the organization.
Okay, so we were talking just before off camera about how you're moderating a panel later today, talking about that fiat to crypto sort of onboarding. Tell us a little bit about that, because you seem uniquely positioned to understand a little bit more about that than the average person.
Okay, so I'm waiting for mass adoption. Like many people, I'm volunteering in multiple friends clubs. Like one of them is the Bitcoin Association and the Bitcoin Embassy and the Bitcoin Association. And the main goals is to distribute Bitcoin and to teach people about Bitcoin and about cryptocurrencies and how to hold them, how to create